Hi, I'm Jim Zogby and welcome to Viewpoint. The presidential election is now officially 1 year away and it promises to be a long season of campaigning, media coverage, and candidate debates. To give us some insight on where things stand now and some near-term predictions, I want to welcome Peter Fenn. He's president of Fenn Communications Group, a political and public affairs media firm that's been involved in over 300 campaigns. He was the first executive director of the Center for Responsive Politics and served as a staff member on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Thanks, Peter.
Great to be back.
The field is shrinking on the Republican side, but on the Democratic side, it's a tidy three. Right. I want to actually go through the three of them, if we could, taking a look at where they are, what we can expect, and maybe what the prospects are. And then I want to look at the field in a broader sense, Democrats versus Republicans, and get a sense of the national landscape. Let's take a look at the Democrats. Martin O'Malley is an interesting guy. He's a next generation candidate, very attractive when he speaks. He does have a kind of a lyrical flow and almost some people say Kennedy-esque in a way. But he's down at 3%, 4%, 5% and not going anywhere. Is there no space for a Martin O'Malley, or is it Martin O'Malley himself?
Well, I think there's a couple of problems that he's got. First of all, no one knows who he is outside of Maryland. And his poll numbers in Maryland aren't that great. Last time I looked, it was 4% and 2% in the presidential race. Yeah. So they may like him a bit in the Democratic side, but they're not taking him seriously yet. Then what that does, of course, is dry up your money. I thought in the debate, that he presented himself well. His vision of this campaign as a very young staff member for Gary Hart in 1984 against Walter Mondale as an insurgent is he wants to be that insurgent candidate. So in order for that to happen, Jim, he's got to do well in Iowa, and obviously he's got to do well in New Hampshire. Otherwise, he's probably running out of money and running out of time.
You and I know politics from the 70s and 80s when if you won Iowa, it gave you that kind of kick that moved you forward. With the amount of money that's in the game right now, does that even happen anymore? I mean, if you win Iowa, but you don't already have a ground game in Indiana and Ohio, et cetera, can you do anything?
Right. I mean, I think one of the problems is that it's very difficult to get catapulted into the presidential nomination in a few states. First of all, we go through all of February, and we only have 4 states going for the Democrats. We have Iowa, we have New Hampshire, we have South Carolina, we have Nevada. So, and then on March 1st, we've got 13 states, and some of them big and some of them important. So, you got to play in those states.
And you already need to be playing.
You have to have your ads up. You have to have your organization set. You have to have money in those states. A guy like Martin O'Malley cannot look at those 13 states. Now, a lot of people, now you're probably going to get to this, but a lot of people thought that Bernie Sanders wouldn't be able to play either. Yeah. But when you raise the kind of money that Bernie Sanders has raised, he'll be able to play.
So the idea of Iowa giving you a boost and is probably passé.
I think it can give you a bit of a boost, but you have to have something to build on, and you have to be really ready. But I think one of the things that Iowa or New Hampshire, those early states, can do is really knock somebody down. I mean, that's basic, or knock somebody
There is a bit
out.
of expectations, though. I mean, this is a guy who's at 4 or 5%. If he comes out of Iowa with 30%,
oh my God! If he came out at 30%, he'd be.
That's what he's. It's a wing and a prayer right now, but that's where he's going.
In fact, if I were Martin O'Malley, I would. I mean, I wouldn't be silly about expectations, but I'd say, look, I'm looking for double digits. Yeah. That's what I want to do in Iowa. I want to show that I can do a whole lot better than they're predicting.
Bernie Sanders is clearly the surprise of this election. It's a small field, but one guy is the surprise, and it's Bernie Sanders. He's a grumpy old man with a youthful appeal. I
Right.
mean, kids are eating them up.
They're
And
gaga over 'em.
how do we explain it? What's going on? What does it say about our politics?
Well, I think it says a couple things. Look, you have it on the Republican side and the Democratic side. There is this anti-Washington sense. There's this tired of politics as usual and politicians as usual. And even though Bernie Sanders has been a politician his whole life, he plays into that. But the main thing with Bernie is his message. I mean, he has a very simple, very strong message. He has been giving the same stump speech for 35 years. I mean, this man is, if anything, consistent about his role as a democratic socialist, and going after the powerful and the moneyed interests. So, right now, that message resonates, I think, with, especially as you say, with young people.
Hillary Clinton, she's got the money. She's gobbled up a lot of the senior staff. And she's got the poll numbers to boot. The talk of her being the inevitable from the beginning,
Right.
Is that where we are now?
Well, it's funny. Initially, she was inevitable, and she was like, "Oh my God, what's happened to Hillary?" And now, she's back to being, at least if not inevitable, definitely the big dog in the fight. Obviously, the Republicans, I think, have so overreached going after her. A lot of very wise Republicans, friends of mine, said, "Look, we're not going to beat her on emails. We're not going to beat her on Benghazi. I mean, we have to come up with something better than that. We've tried to go after the Clintons personally. It doesn't work." And I think the other thing that's happened is in the first debate, in the debates that she's participated in, she really showed her stuff. I mean, you have Republicans that are flailing around up there, calling each other idiots and talking about low energy. And this was an adult discussion that she's been having with the voters. So, and I think ultimately two things on Bernie will end up disqualifying him. One, I don't think folks will see him as winning a nomination. Worried about that, and winning a general election. And they're very nervous about it. So that puts Hillary out front. And the second thing is, who would make the better president? I mean, who has, what it takes to run the country? And I think that what she's shown these last few months is that she really has gravitas and would make a strong.
What can
candidate.
happen to derail her? There is the email thing, which
Right.
whether Republicans should have raised it or left it to the Justice Department is a different question.
Right.
But there are some issues out there that continue to haunt her.
Right.
Can any of them
harm
her campaign?
I think certainly. I mean, I think you've got the FBI looking into the classification of some of these documents. You've got issues with the Clinton Foundation and the cross-pollination. Is there a problem there? I don't happen to think there is too much of a problem. But, look, Jim, the one thing that you and I know after being in this game for a long, long time is trustworthiness, honesty, your word. These are important. And
52% say she's not somebody they trust.
Well, that she needs to change those numbers.
How do you do that? I mean,
Well,
that's what I watch her.
Right.
I watch her trying to be authentic, and I say, "You're trying to be authentic."
Right.
I watch
Right.
her trying to be trustworthy, and I say, "I'm not sure I trust that
Right.
appearance of being." I mean,
Right.
these are issues that we've known her for a long time.
Right.
It's tough to remake your image
Right.
when everybody knows you.
And I do think, look, it's like the anti-Obama feeling that has been out there
Yeah.
for 8 years. Some of this stuff in this kind of polarized situation is going to stay. Now, you don't want 52% of the people going to the voting booth thinking that. Now, if it's 35, those are mostly Republicans and mostly conservatives.
You can
and
live
folks
with that.
you can live with that.
Hyper-partisan era, you can live with 35, even 40. But when the majority, that's a problem.
No, it's a problem, and I think they recognize it as a problem. And I think that one of the things that a lot of us urged was, don't do the bunker mentality anymore. I mean, that doesn't work. It didn't work very well early on. When she did the very best in her first campaign for the Senate in New York, she got out there. So she's been on these, these late night shows. She's gone on the Sunday shows. She should do more of it. Some of it was very painful. She had to sit there and, and meet the press and take questions on emails for 18 minutes or whatever it was. And, do you like doing that? No. Do you want to talk about the issues you think American people care about? Yes. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, there's a ring of fire. You got to run through it.
Biden is out.
Right.
Is there anybody who can still get in? Is there any way that the sort of the contours of this race changes, or are these the three candidates and we're now off to the
No,
the
I
final?
think we're kind of off to the races.
Okay.
Part of the problem is that the filing deadlines come very quickly. They're putting together your delegate slates, as you know. So, the fall, if you're not really into this race before the New Year starts, you need 2,200 and some delegates to win this
And
thing.
she's got a chunk already.
Well, she's got a chunk of super delegates, and she's got a chunk of supporters. And if you haven't gotten in, you're going to lose right off the bat 400
So
delegates.
if O'Malley does well in Iowa,
Right.
and Bernie, who was leading, let's look at these numbers right now, because we've got the numbers to look at. In Iowa, this is Hillary Clinton, 62, and Bernie 31, and Martin O'Malley 3%. He has not cracked the threshold of visibility in Iowa.
Right.
We go to New Hampshire, where Bernie was leading in almost every poll, and some of them rather substantially. Now it's
This is still Iowa, but
we're still in Iowa. There's another Iowa poll with
Right.
her doubling,
Right.
O'Malley looking a little better, but basically it's a Clinton state.
And Lessing is out now.
And then if you go to New Hampshire, you got Clinton now edging out Sanders. But if Sanders does happen to pull off New Hampshire, by the time you get to South Carolina, it's an entirely different story.
Right.
And that is going to be a Clinton state.
Right.
Long history. I mean, she smothers everybody, but there's a lot undecided down there.
Yep.
It looks to me like inevitability is what we're talking about.
Well, the other thing is that you get into different demographics. You go from lily white states, basically, like Iowa and New Hampshire, into states with significant
and that's a lot of the March 1st Super Tuesday states.
Absolutely.
You have
a lot
of the Democratic electorate is African American, and they're going to vote for the Democrat if they're inspired to go. I mean, which is the other thing.
That is always an issue, and one of the things is we know. In 2008, the turnout models in the Iowa caucuses were all wrong. And because of the enthusiasm that Barack Obama brought to that campaign, he won the Iowa caucuses because folks came out for him. I do not think that you can underestimate the enthusiasm that Bernie Sanders folks have. I mean, I think
because a lot of the people polled are people who've gone to previous caucuses, and Bernie and Martin claims as well that they're bringing out new people. So
exactly.
we may get a surprise.
Look, folks with less hair and a lot of it white or graying find it a little bit more difficult to go out in the middle of a snowstorm to an Iowa caucus than to the 22-year-olds.
Been there and done that.
That's right.
Listen, going forward, Carly Fiorina
Right.
says, I'm Hillary Clinton's worst nightmare. Is she?
No. I tell you, I think
who is the Republican that Democrats need to be most
this
concerned?
is very, very tricky. At the moment, in the fall, as you're going into next year and things are beginning to shake out, you've got somebody like Marco Rubio who's rising up a bit, partly because he's articulate as all get out. He does his homework. You know, he serves on the Foreign Relations Committee, understands some foreign policy, which a lot of these folks don't. He served as Speaker of his House in Florida. And his message is the John Kennedy message, to be honest. His message is new generation of Americans. You know, we're ready for the future. This whole crowd is the past, and we need to move on. And, you know, that kind of change message is not bad. The other thing that I think, you know, on this is the Trump-Carson. Are they going to stick with them? Are they going to hold, or will they abandon those folks?
From the very beginning of this contest, when they started polling and Fiorina was doing a little better, what's been consistent in the polls is more than 50% of Republican voters supporting somebody who's never held elective office and who's running against the establishment.
Right.
And the numbers are still there. It's Trump. Trump 28, Carson 26, or Carson
half,
28,
right.
Trump 26. It's over half.
Right.
What does that say about the politics? If you've got Bernie Sanders on the one side against big money and the billionaire class, and on the other side you've got against politics and politicians across the board. This is a strange climate.
It's a very strange climate. Also, you have what I call the entertainment tonight factor in the Republican side, the Hollywood Squares factor, right? I mean, here are these guys. You know, look, 24 million turn into the first debate, 23 million turn into the second debate. Even, you know, everybody poo-pooed the debate a while back with the CNBC. That was 14 million people. Those are big numbers.
Who probably didn't know CNBC existed.
They couldn't find it on the cable box. Yeah. But, you know, this is partly because it's entertainment tonight. Now,
do they vote?
That is a real interesting question. And I tell you, if you look at the history of the United States, once people kind of get, push comes to shove, they think, wait a second, I'm voting for the most important job in the world. This is a very personal vote for me. I may have liked these guys, found them interesting, found them stimulating, but good grief, I'm not going to vote for them. That's the Fiorina problem, that's the Carson problem, and that's the Trump problem.
Here's the problem, though. I want to take it one step further, and that is I'm talking to some of these Trump people, and what you just made was a very rational assessment. It's the most important job in the world. Who do I want running it? Right. These are people who are mad.
Right.
I don't mean insane mad. I mean just angry.
Right.
Not trusting.
Right.
And they look at Trump and Carson.
Right.
Different personalities.
Right.
But they say they share my anger.
Right.
And it's a screw you vote. Pardon my French.
Right.
But that's.
Right.
I wonder if it can be sustained.
Right.
We're still early.
Right.
But this is not a situation where people are making the most rational choice.
You know, I agree with that. And I think one of the great ironies of this is if you listen to Republicans and conservatives and over the last 8 years, they have bitched and moaned, pardon my French, about Barack Obama. You know, he was first-term senator, hardly got his feet wet. Here's this guy who came into the Oval Office totally unprepared, unqualified. And then they're going to turn around and put a Ben Carson or Donald Trump, or for that matter, a Carly Fiorina in there. It's sort of astounding to me. And we have had, other than generals, we have had only 2 presidents in our history who had not held elective office. Both of them, Taft and Hoover, had very responsible positions, Secretary of Commerce for Hoover and Governor of the Philippines for Taft, and were very well-respected, solid guys. We've had some run. Wendell Willkie ran against Franklin Roosevelt in 1940 and became an exciting candidate for a while. But we, you know, and you may be right. I mean, it may be a funny year, and it may be the kind of year where we would throw all the bums out. And, you know, I don't care that they don't have any experience. But I think, end of the day, if you have a Hillary Clinton against a Fiorina, a Trump, or a Carson, this race is over. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do not think people are going to go there. And the debates that they'll watch and the campaign that they'll see will show, you know, when Ben Carson didn't know what the debt limit was in an interview with NPR, I mean, you know, it's like, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I'm not sure we necessarily get there in the sense that
Right.
Christine O'Connell beat Mike Castle, who was
Right.
probably the one of the most experienced, most sensible and thoughtful Republican member of Congress for a
Right.
long time, sitting under Joe Biden.
Right.
The seat opens up, he runs for it,
Right.
and this woman who was basically a freak show.
She said she
beat him.
wasn't a witch, remember? I'm not a witch.
And,
She had to do it.
and I'm looking right now at the degree to which this mindset has
Right.
taken hold in the
Right.
Republican Party, and I wonder if there wasn't a place for a John Huntsman, a John Kasich.
Right,
It doesn't
right.
seem to get any traction. Does that mindset at some point change, or does it crack
This
and
is
allow a reasonable candidate to come forward?
That question is really one of the fundamental questions I think we're going to be dealing with in this election cycle. Good, friendly Republicans of mine who are conservative but pragmatic, some of them, and many of whom worked for Mitt Romney, they said, look, maybe we have to nominate even if it's a Ted Cruz or one of these other people, gets smashed, and then the Republican Party finally says to itself, you know, we've been shrinking our tent for the last dozen years, and we can't do it anymore and win a national election. We may be able to pick off congressmen and senators in these off years where the turnout is way down. But if we're going to win a national election, we can't be anti-immigrant. We can't be anti-gay. We cannot be anti-women. We can, I mean, anti-middle class. I mean, excuse me, we have got to make sure that we change our image in the country. And if we elect, in other words, some of those said, look, if a Jeb Bush or a John Kasich or somebody, or even a Rubio, but if you nominate a kind of regular Republican and he loses, then it's like, oh my God, here we go again, because the right wing will be back saying, you know, it's our party, it's our party.
The Trump thing is fascinating to me because the very first debate, the pundit said, oh my God, he's a buffoon, he lost. He said horrible things to Megyn Kelly. The second debate, they said, oh my God, he's worse than we thought, he's over. And in between that, he had made some comments about John McCain and whatever. It's almost as if everything you throw at him, or every dumb thing he throws out, or that Carson throws out, only serves to make them stronger. It's as if you're attacking the guy who reflects my anger, and now I'm going to show you how angry I am. It seems that is where we are. There was a superhero like that, I remember, where you punched him and he absorbed your strength. It seems like that's where this particular narrowly based constituency is. My brother argues that what America needs is the third party, the Republican Party.
Yeah, right.
It's like there is no place for a John Kasich on a national stage.
And I think that's scary to a lot of reasonable Republicans. And look, I'm not talking about the old days of the liberal Republicans and moderate liberals. We're not talking about Jacob Javits, Clifford Case, Ed Brooke, Mac Mathias. I mean,
Or for God's sake, Nelson Rockefeller.
Nelson Rockefeller.
Who couldn't win a Democratic primary right now because he's too liberal.
You know? Exactly. I mean, these were, and you know, the fascinating thing for folks to do, really for some of your viewers, go back and look at the 1956 Republican platform. Look at the 1960 Republican platform. Look at 64. Look at 68. Go all. You don't. I mean, it's not. You keep on going, and this is a totally different party. So we used to talk about Ronald Reagan as the Teflon president. Well, I mean, he took a lot of incoming compared to these characters, and also those folks that quote Ronald Reagan wrote a letter to Howard Baker saying, hey, you want to put the full faith and credit of the United States on the line? You have to make sure that some of the folks in your party don't do that and do approve of that.
I want to ask one last question. That is, to what extent, and this is a sensitive one, but I think about it a lot, and we only got 2 minutes, so I'm going to force you to come quick on it. To what extent is racism at work here? Is the fact that we had a recession, We had unemployment double. We had pensions go down 30%. We had home foreclosures,
Right.
1 in 5 being threatened. And in the middle of that, when the white middle class is suffering and the American dream is dying, a young, bright African-American guy gets elected president, and they look and they say, damn, that's not right.
Well, you know, if you look at the map, Jim, and you probably have, from 2008, and you see those counties, they do it by county, those counties that voted more for John Kerry than they did for Barack Obama, they go right down that Appalachian belt, western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, eastern Kentucky down. And if someone looks at that map and tells me that race doesn't play, it plays.
Is it still playing out, though, in this psychology on the Republican
I
side?
think a little bit of it is. And I'll tell you one of the problems. It isn't only the Hispanics that are angry and blacks. If you look at the Asian vote, that is an increasing vote. Asians, the George H.W. Bush carried the Asian vote. Barack Obama got over 75% of the Asian vote. This is this sense of intolerance, that you guys don't value us. And that's why my Republican friends say, we got to get out of that box. It's a bad box.
It's a polarized
to be in.
electorate and a polarized climate, and we're going to have you back and talk more about it as the year goes on.
Okay, look forward
But that's
to it.
all the time we've got for now. For more information, you can follow us on Twitter at AIUSA, or check out our website, aaiusa.org. That's all the time we've got. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week on Viewpoint.